section 9.2, rational shifts. Corner seats, move your chairs, please. Tonight's homework is page 584. It's taking everything we've learned in the last 3 days and applying everything that we've learned between the graph and table and asymptotes and domain and range, all of that stuff to give me one answer. That's for tonight's homework. I want to go over numbers 3 through 7 from the review assignment. Number 3 is asking me to identify the vertical asymptotes and the x-intercepts. So I have f of x is equal to x cubed minus 4x over 4x squared plus 4x. I'm going to go ahead and make my dividers here so that I have sections, but I really just care about these two sections. They want the vertical asymptotes and the x-intercepts. If I want the vertical asymptote, all I need to do is set the denominator equal to 0. So 4x squared plus 4x equaling 0. I'm going to take out a 4x and I'm left with x plus 1 equaling 0. I do the 0 product property. 4x equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0. So my two asymptotes are x equals 0 and x equals negative 1. That's pretty straightforward, all from what we've been doing the last few days. Actually, the last few months, FYI. Right? Factoring and setting it equal to 0. X-intercepts means you put what equal to 0 this time? The numerator is equal to 0. So this time I'm going to set the numerator equal to 0. X cubed minus 4x equaling 0. I can factor out an x. I'm left with x squared minus 4 equals 0. This factors to x plus 2 and x minus 2. So my x-intercepts, if I do the 0 product property, x equals 0, x equals 2, and x equals negative 2. Are there going to be any holes in this graph?
No.
Yes. Why is there going to be a hole? 0 and 0. So whenever you have something being canceled out, the top numerator and the denominator, it's going to be a hole. Any questions on number 3? Who's feeling better about this stuff? Good. Nice. Let's do number 4. All they want is the vertical asymptotes for numbers 4 and 5. Negative 3, and then x minus 2 minus 1. All of that equals f of x. A lot of us ask me questions about this negative 1. What do I do? What happens with this negative? Only thing you care about for an asymptote is what is not allowed to be 0. The denominator. So I literally don't care about anything else. Now this negative 1, and I'm going to teach you guys this next when we come back from break. This negative 1 is actually your horizontal asymptote. So anytime you have a number just on the side like that, that's your HA. And I'll show you the long proof of that when we get back from the break. But just for now, like I showed Elizabeth and I showed Brooklyn, and they saw it and they're like, okay, I see how we get to that negative 1. But for now, I just want you to at least recognize it. But the only thing I care about for a vertical asymptote is my denominator has to equal 0. So it's just x minus 2 equals 0. So x equals 2. And number 5, all I care about is the denominator equaling 0. God bless you. f of x is equal to negative 4, over x minus 1 minus 2. So all I care about is the denominator equaling 0. I literally don't care about anything else. An asymptote, all that creates an asymptote is if your denominator is 0. I don't care about the behavior. I don't care if it's fat or skinny. I don't care what the horizontal is. I don't care about anything. So all I care about is the denominator equaling 0 at 1. Raise your hand if you got those. Nice. So you'll be fine on the opener then, okay? Like the opener is like basic compared to this. Number 6. Now we're gonna do the whole shebang. We're gonna do the holes, vertical asymptotes, x-intercepts, blah, blah, blah. So now we're gonna do the entire quadrant that I taught you to use. So x minus 4 over x minus 1. We have all 4 parts they want this time. They want the vertical asymptotes. They want the x-intercepts. They want the hole, if there is any. They want the horizontal asymptote. They don't want the table because we're not going to graph, God bless you. So we're going to put the domain right here. Yesterday we went over the domain. Help me remember. Domain, walk the main floor. The domain depends on the x values or y? X, very good. So does the domain, is it affected by the vertical asymptotes or the horizontal? Who hits the x-axis? Who's going to affect the domain? The horizontal? The vertical, right? So your vertical asymptotes are going to dictate your domain. Okay? Kyle, stand up for me because this is the second day in a row you've done that. Stand up. Stand up. All right, so our vertical asymptotes depend on the denominator equaling 0. So x minus 1 equals 0. That means that my vertical asymptote is that x equals 1. If I want my x-intercepts, then my numerator is equal to 0. So x minus 4 is equal to 0, so that's x equaling 4. Do I have any holes?
No.
Why not?
Because 4 and 1 are
Yeah, they're not the same, so I do not have any holes. None. Is this top heavy, bottom heavy, or the same? The same. So what do you look at if it's the same? The coefficient. What's the coefficient here? What's the number in front of the x? 1. What's the coefficient here? 1 divided by 1 is? So y equals 1. By the way, the x-intercept should be a point, guys, so let's write it as 4, 0. It's not a line. Sorry. So what's your domain if you have a vertical asymptote at 1? Are you allowed to hit all x's? You just told me that x is not allowed to be 1. So how do you tell people it can be anything but 1? Negative infinity to 1, and then into infinity. What's another way of writing that? Questions on number 6? All right, number 7. Kyle, are you awake now? Sit down. Now we're going to do the last, number 7. I have f of x is equal to x cubed plus x squared minus 2x over negative 4x squared minus 4x plus 24. All right, let's do our vertical asymptotes first. What do I set equal to 0 for a vertical asymptote? The denominator is equal to 0. So I have negative 4x squared minus 4x plus 24 equaling 0. I can factor out a negative 4, and I'm left with x squared plus x minus 6 equaling 0. Now I can factor this, so I took out a negative 4, what multiplies to negative 6 but adds to 1? Positive 3 and minus 2. If we can't factor by now, you guys, you really should take Math 3 again, okay? Because this is like the clutch. It's like life, okay? We can't move on to the next math level if we can't factor. So I want us to make sure that we're feeling good about this. Does this say negative 4 or does this say negative 4x? So you're not going to put negative 4 equaling to 0. That makes no sense. So some of you guys are doing this. Negative 4x, what? There's no x there. You don't do that. It's just negative 4. It just means that your graph is either fatter or skinnier. That's all that means. There's no x attached to it. Don't make stuff up. Everybody with me? Another thing is, you guys see this x squared right here? See the x squared? So how many answers should I have? 2. 1, 2. Not 1, 2, 3. It doesn't make sense. The negative 4 is not an intercept. It's not an x. It's just deciding the shape of your polynomial. Everybody with me? All right, so these two are the only ones you set to equal to 0. So x equals negative 3 and x equals 2. That's your vertical asymptotes. They want me to identify holes, but I can't do a hole until I do what? How do I know if I have a hole? Unless I see what the x-intercepts are. So I need to figure out if anything cancels. How do I find the x-intercepts? Set the numerator equal to 0. So we're going to do the same thing to see if there's any holes. What can I factor out in the numerator? An x. So I have an x cubed plus x squared minus 2x. Factor out an x. And I have x squared plus x minus 2. So I have an x. Yes, I have an x there. That's an x. That's a 4. That's an x. That's a negative 4. That's not the same thing. And then I factor this. What multiplies to negative 2 and adds to 1? And that's going to be set equal to 0. This has a 3 up here, so yes, I'm going to have 3 answers. What are my 3 answers? X equals 0, 1, and negative 2. So do I have any holes? Alyssa, are you with me? You don't look like you are. You with me now? Okay. Are there any holes? What's the matter? You can't see what? Come move up, babe. Are there any holes, guys? No, because there's nothing here that repeats, so there's no holes. What's the last thing that they want for number 7? Horizontal asymptote. So, is this top heavy, bottom heavy, or the same? Top heavy. Do you have an asymptote if you're top heavy? No. So there is no horizontal asymptote. All right, can you guys give me a summary, please, on what you reviewed and what you still need help on, please? Give me a summary.